Alright everyone, this is going to be the final part of what if Jessy and James took the gym challenge, for HOENN at least. The reason why I'm going to try and wrap it all up in this part is because this one I feel like has been drawn out long enough. And to tell you the truth, after writing everything, I've kind of gotten a little bit bored with it. So I feel like 10 parts is long enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through everything that I can today, and we'll wrap up the last 2 badges for them, the conclusion of the Team AQUA and Team MAGMA arcs, and the Lily of the Valley Conference, leading in to their return to Kanto. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy, and if you haven't already, please check out the other parts before you check this one out, because they're essential to what's going to happen in this part. But anyway, let's get into the finale. Alright, so we're picking back up with Jessy and James as they're facing off with Butch and Cassidy, and as well, Dr. Namba. The animosity has grown to a peak with these 2 duos. Butch and Cassidy are fed up with the mistreatment that they're getting from Team Rocket, that they've been shown with the favoritism towards Jessy and James lately. And Jessy and James are tired of living in Butch and Cassidy's shadow, and more so, they're tired of being mistreated by the duo. Too long in the ranks of Team Rocket have Jessy and James been under their heel. They want to resolve this now, and they also view Butch and Cassidy as traitors to Team Rocket, so they aim to bring them in for judgment on the behalf of Giovanni. But of course, Butch and Cassidy aren't going to go without a fight. Cassidy tells Jessy she intends to make sure that she doesn't leave here today. Butch echoes that sentiment, telling James that they're going to relieve them of all their Pokemon. Jessy and James tell them that they're going to be the ones who lose. Butch and Cassidy both send out some old friends of Jessy and James, Arbok and Weezing, as well as Nummel and Breloom. Butch and Cassidy both give them the orders to attack Jessy and James, but the 4 Pokemon, they're hesitant. They don't want to attack their trainers. These were the trainers that had caught them. These were the trainers that put the time in with them, and these trainers are the ones they actually care for. They refuse to take the orders from Butch and Cassidy. Butch and Cassidy make their usual threat, putting them back inside their Pokeball. But still, this doesn't work. They refuse to take orders, and they actually choose to switch sides back to Jessy and James to oppose Butch, Cassidy, and Namba. James smugly says, see, even though you took those Pokemon from us, they're still loyal to us because we treat them right. We don't treat them like tools. We treat them like the partners that they are. But Butch and Cassidy do still have 1 Pokemon on their side, and they send out their Mightyena. Jessy, super overconfident, says, you're 1 Pokemon against our 4? I highly doubt you'd stand a chance against this. But to make sure that you have no chance at all, why don't we make the odds a little bit more in our favor? James seconds his sentiment, and he sends out Zangoose, and Jessy sends out Sevipe. The 2 Pokemon eye each other with the intention of fighting, but Jessy and James quickly snap at them, telling them that there is something more important. They need to take out the 2, Butch and Cassidy. With that being said, both Zangoose and Seviper put their differences aside, and they're focused on taking out the opposition. But then, as the battle gets ready to start, you just hear a maniacal laughing coming from behind Butch and Cassidy. It's Namba. He is just laughing to himself, and James thinks, this guy's gone crazy. Why is he laughing so hard to himself? Then Namba finally speaks. He tells Jessy and James, what, you think that this was in your favor the whole time? I know about your gym challenge, and I know about your use of the Pokédex. And you know something? Those Pokédex were designed by me, with features that I installed. Jessy says, so what does that mean? He goes, it's quite simple. I developed those Pokédexes to keep track of any Pokemon that were caught by Team Rocket, but it was designed using technology that I built. Do you guys remember our experiment at the Lake of Rage in Johto? How we were forcing Magikarp to evolve to try and control them? Even though that experiment failed, it did give us some promising results. And after some fine-tuning and modifications, I was able to greatly increase and improve the technology that we used at the Lake of Rage. Improve it so far as to compact it in something small, like a Pokédex. Jessy then thinks to herself, no, it can't be. Jessy says, that part of the Pokédex that no one can access, that has hidden files in it, that was you? Namba says, oh, so you're familiar with my work. Well, let me show you exactly what it does. Then Namba pulls out a receiver and flips a switch. This switch begins to send out a radio frequency throughout the ship, and it doesn't affect Mightyena, but it affects all of the Pokemon that are on Jessy and James' side. Seviper, Zangoose, Breloom, Arbok, Weezing, and Nummel, all of them with their eyes glowing red, turn to face Jessy and James with hostility in their eyes. They aim to attack them. Namba begins laughing maniacally again. You see, any Pokemon that was caught by a trainer using my Pokédex, they were instantly registered and synced with this energy wave that I've developed. So now, no matter what, all of your Pokemon are ours, and there's nothing you can do about it. Jessy and James refuse to believe this. James tries to reach his Pokemon, and Jessy tries to reach hers, with no avail. Nothing can get through. They don't understand what's going on. Just a moment ago, all of these Pokemon Flygon wanted to fight with them, and now they view them as enemies. James refused to accept this, so he sends out his Cacnea, and the moment it's let out of the ball, its eyes too begin to glow red, and it turns and faces them with hostility. He then sends out Masquerain, Dusclops, and Medicham. All two have their eyes glow red, and turn to face Jessy and James with hostility. James can't believe it. All of his Pokemon, every one of them, are against him. No matter what he tries, all of his pleas fall on deaf ears. James then tries his last one, Aggron. This was a huge mistake. As soon as it's let out of its ball, it too begins to glow with red eyes, but it is far more hostile than the other Pokemon. Because of its power, it immediately starts thrashing about, attacking towards Jessy and James without a command. Jessy sees this coming, so she immediately sends out Exploud, hoping that at least it'll be able to counter its power. But Exploud is of no help. It too is caught by the wave and begins thrashing about with its power. Namba, maniacally laughing, tells him, "See, I told you guys, any Pokemon caught by someone who has my Pokédex will be under my control. You have no way to fight back here. There's nothing you can do. You might as well just hand over your last Pokemon and leave. There's no way you could win." Jessy thinks to herself, there's gotta be a way. This cannot be the end. But then she thinks for a second. She had Watt disable that part of her Pokédex at a certain point, which means some of her Pokemon may not be affected. James is screaming at Jessy, "We have to get out of here. Jessy, we need to move now. There's nothing we can do. We have to regroup and try and find a way to put these guys down." Jessy says, "Hold on, James. I think I have an idea." Jessy throws her remaining 3 Pokeballs. Out pops Feel, Claydol, and Absol, but they're not affected by the wave. Jessy was right. She had that part of the Pokédex disabled, so these 3 Pokemon will be unaffected by the waves. Jessy says, "Well, it's not much, but it's the best we got." James then makes a mistake, thinking that he also has a Pokemon that may be unaffected, and sends out Masquerain, but it too has its eyes glow red and becomes affected by the waves. James says, "I don't understand. How come your 3 Pokemon are affected but mine aren't?" Jessy, ordering attacks from her 3 Pokemon to block the attacks coming in from the other ones, tells James, "I had that part of my Pokédex disabled when I was in Mauville City, so those 3 Pokemon are the only 3 that we got. We have to use them and figure out a way around this. We have no choice. Otherwise, Namba, Butch, and Cassidy are going to win, and Team Magma is going to be able to accomplish their goals. Our job as Team Rocket members is to make sure that that does not happen." Now, we flash over to Domino and the Iron Mask Marauder on the Team Aqua ship. Domino has her back to the wall as the Iron Mask Marauder and Flygon are approaching her. She tries to radio for help from Jessy and James, but all she gets is static on the line. She says, "Great. This isn't good. How am I going to get out of this?" The Iron Mask Marauder gives Domino one chance. He says join him. He'll put a good word in with her for Team Aqua, and they can be the muscle for Team Aqua, acquiring resources for them. They do pay quite well, actually. Domino says thanks, but she knows where her loyalty lies. And with that, she throws Dustox's ball and calls upon it, hoping that it'll be able to put up a fight against the Flygon. But as soon as it emerges from its ball, its eyes begin glowing red, and then it takes off. It's like it's being drawn somewhere. Domino doesn't understand, and now she realizes that she truly is alone. As the Iron Mask Marauder orders Flygon to attack, Domino does her best to defend and dodge. With Flygon firing Hyper Beam after Hyper Beam, it's tearing through the ship, and Domino is using the holes in the ship to get away. When they finally come to a room, this room seems to be a containment room for something of some kind, but she doesn't know what it is. Flygon comes tearing through with another Hyper Beam, while the Iron Mask Marauder is right behind him. This Hyper Beam hits the control panel on the containment unit, and the containment unit immediately starts to short circuit, and then there is a huge explosion that catches Domino, the Iron Mask Marauder, and Flygon. Once the smoke starts to settle and they can actually see what's going on, there's a Pokemon inside. And as the smoke clears, this Pokemon lets out a loud roar. Domino doesn't know what it is, but the Iron Mask Marauder says, "Ah, an Armaldo. That's what they had locked. Interesting." Domino thinks to herself, Armaldo, but she has no time to react. The Armaldo immediately starts to try to attack the 3. It is extremely upset for being locked away in that containment unit. It's like it was being experimented on by Team Aqua. When it realizes that it cannot catch Domino because of her small size, it immediately goes after Flygon, and the 2 Pokemon battle it out right there on the ship, tearing it apart even more than Flygon was by itself. They refuse to give up, firing Hyper Beam after Hyper Beam at each other. It's gotten to the point to where the ship has started taking on water. Domino realizes that she has to get out of here. She doesn't know what happened to Dustox, and this Armaldo seems to be focused on battling as much as it can. She has to use this to her advantage. With that, Domino tries to make her escape from the Iron Mask Marauder, but he refuses to let her get away. He tells Domino he will be turning her into his employers for a nice bonus, so it doesn't matter what she tries, she won't be getting out of here. The Iron Mask Marauder then sends out a second Pokemon, Pelipper, and this Pelipper, too, seems to be of a higher level than normal, and with it, the Iron Mask Marauder orders Water Gun and a Water Pulse, trying to stop Domino. But Domino is successful in dodging. She doesn't know what to do. Her back is to the wall, and she doesn't really have many options. But as she is cornered by the Pelipper, Flygon and Armaldo come tearing through a wall, knocking into both of them, rolling into another room. The Iron Mask Marauder is also caught in this and taken with him, but he does drop a couple of things on the way out. 3 Dark Balls. Domino sees this and immediately knows what they are. She's hoping that these are the balls for Pelipper and Flygon. She grabs the 3 balls and she immediately runs to the room and she starts trying to return them. The first one doesn't work, but the second one manages to return the Flygon, and the third one manages to return the Pelipper. That just leaves Armaldo. Armaldo is on a tear, and it sees the Iron Mask Marauder and immediately tries to attack it. The Iron Mask Marauder sees this coming and reaches for his balls, but when he realizes that he's lost all of them due to being caught in the fight with the Pokemon, he immediately tries to make his escape. He is able to get through a doorway that is too small for Armaldo to get through. With no other targets, Armaldo turns his attention to Domino. Domino nervously looks at the Bug Rock Pokemon. She knows that it aims to attack her, but she has no choice. She hopes that this last Dark Ball is just a spare, and as Armaldo runs toward her, she throws it at it, and it hits it. Then with 1, 2, 3, the ball stops shaking, just in the nick of time too, as water floods into the room. Domino grabs the last Dark Ball, and she heads for the doorway, making her escape off the sinking ship. Back outside, as Domino gets off the ship onto the island, the battle rages on, with Kyogre and Groudon. Weather has become a destructive force, the sun shining super bright, burning the earth, as torrential rains pour down, putting out fires and drowning land masses. The island seems to be getting smaller with the increased water that is being poured. Domino knows that something has to be done. She can see, off in the distance, a Dragonite and a red Gyarados doing their best to try and quell the fighting, while a familiar Pikachu is helping Groudon battle Kyogre. She looks over to the Team Magma ship. She knows Jessy and James are there, and the fact that they didn't answer their comms means that they're in trouble. She immediately heads for the ship. Back inside, Jessy is doing her best to fend off all of the Pokemon. Cassidy, now overconfident, also sends out her Tropius. All of these Pokemon are taking orders from Namba, Butch, and Cassidy, and all Jessy and James have is just Feel, which prefers to play more than battle, Claydol, which has good defense, but is running on empty, and Laleep, which unfortunately isn't as mobile as the other two, and Absol, which is doing its best to dodge attacks, but all 4 of them are getting tired. And Jessy is at her wit's end. She doesn't know what else she can do. These Pokemon are all attacking relentlessly without holding anything back, and James, due to the lack of not having anything, has begun to crumble under the pressure. He doesn't know what to do. There's no way for him to help. All he can do is just sit there and watch as Jessy does her best to fend off the horde of Pokemon that they used to call friends. And slowly, one by one, each of Jessy's Pokemon drop. First Lily, then Spheal, then Claydol, with just Absol left to protect them. Absol is doing its best, and Jessy is giving command after command, but unfortunately, Absol too gets overwhelmed by the crowd of Pokemon, and it too falls. Butch and Cassidy are super pleased with themselves. The two didn't think that it would be this easy to put their enemies down, but they won't be letting Jessy and James leave here. With one final command, they give the order for all of the Pokemon to attack, and all of the former friends of Jessy and James attack them with all of their combined attacks all at once to try and end the duo. Jessy and James look to each other. They realize that they had a good run, but they didn't want it to end like this. Just then, Dustox comes flying through, looking for the source of the signal, trying to join the fight. Unfortunately, it ends up taking the brunt of the attacks, getting knocked out, severely injured. Jessy looks to Dustox. If it's out of the ball, that means that Domino can't be far behind. And sure enough, she was right, because moments later, Domino appears as the group of Pokemon get ready to launch their next attack. Domino tells Butch and Cassidy to stand down, or she will be forced to act. Butch and Cassidy simply laugh at her. What are you going to do? You don't have any Pokemon. That is well known throughout Team Rocket. There's no fight that you can put up against us. Domino, with a smile on her face, says, really? You think so? Even though in the back of her mind she thinks, I hope this works. She pulls out the 3 Dark Balls that she got from the Iron Mask Marauder, and she sends them out. Out pop Flygon, Pelipper, and Armaldo. They all let out a loud roar, and they look back at Domino. Domino looks at them and says, listen, your master, he abandoned you. I am your new master now, and I will not. But you will do as I say. This horde of Pokemon is a threat to me, and therefore a threat to you. Your orders are simple. Take them down. Flygon, Armaldo, and Pelipper all look at each other. They're kind of shocked with what's going on. This human seems so sure of herself, and the Iron Mask Marauder was not the one to release them from their ball. They start to question the whole vitality of the situation, but when the Horde of Pokemon decides to try to attack again, that's when they know what she speaks is the truth. So the 3 Pokemon then go into battle. At this point, it doesn't matter what she says is true or not. What matters is that these guys are attacking them, so they need to defend themselves. So the 3 high-level Dark Ball Pokemon begin to defend themselves, and by extension, defending Domino. While Domino thinks to herself, I didn't think that would work, but I'm glad it did. She then asks Jessy and James what's going on, and Jessy debriefs her. She says that Namba used the technology from the Lake of Rage to develop better technology and hide it inside of the Pokédexes. All of the Pokemon that they caught are now under their control. We have to fry the transmitter in order to stop this, or else all those Pokemon are just going to keep coming at us. Domino says, I got it, but I need you guys to cause a distraction. Jessy turns to James and slaps him across the face to snap him out of his funk. James then looks at Jessy and asks if she has a plan. Jessy says, who better than getting in the way than us two? James says, you know, you're right. So while the distraction of the groups of Pokemon are fighting, Jessy and James make their way around, immediately going after Butch and Cassidy, drawing the attention of Butch and Cassidy and Namba towards them, and they immediately try to attack Butch and Cassidy, but are met with Mightyena and Tropius. These two actually belong to Butch and Cassidy and will not let their masters be hurt. Namba is standing behind them, laughing maniacally. You really thought that would work? You really thought you'd be able to get through our defenses to try and stop us? You two are dumber than you look. Just then, from behind Namba, the receiver is hit with the Black Rose that sends out a bolt of electricity, frying the entire system. Namba can't believe it. He turns around and Domino is there. He had forgotten all about her. The distraction of Jessy and James worked. And they tell Namba, you're right, we are dumb. Who better to run a distraction on you two while somebody else does the work? And with the transmitter being fried, all the Pokemon that were under the control of the Namba wave stop fighting. Out of confusion, they're all wondering where they're at, except for one, Exploud. Exploud is still angry. Remember, it listens to no one, and it refused to call anyone its master. It begins to run a rampage, attacking anyone and anything in sight. And when it hits a control panel that explodes, it causes a chain reaction to set off throughout the magma ship. And all of the technology that Namba had developed here is also caught in the explosion. But this explosion also causes this ship to start to sink as well. Jessy and James begin returning their 6 Pokemon to their Pokeballs, but there's a problem. Butch and Cassidy have the Pokeballs for Arbok, Weezing, Numel, and Breloom. They have to get them back. Jessy and James turn to Domino. They tell her they have to pursue Butch and Cassidy. They have to get the Pokeballs back for their Pokemon. Domino says, fine, you guys do what you have to, but I'm getting off this ship. Domino then returns her 3 Pokemon back to the Dark Balls, and she returns Dustox as well. She then says, listen, I'll take your Pokemon with me to get off the ship. You two do what you have to. Jessy orders Arbok to follow her, and James orders Breloom to come with him. Domino takes the remaining Pokemon out with her as Jessy and James pursue Butch and Cassidy. They head deep into the ship, trying to find out where the two have gone, when they come to an underwater bay that's at the bottom of the ship. Unfortunately, Butch and Cassidy have made their escape with Namba in a submarine that Team Magma had. That's it. They've lost. They don't have any chance of getting back the Pokeballs for their Pokemon. What are they going to do now? They need those balls in order to return their Pokemon. Jessy and James have a moment of despair, but when they realize that they have to get out of the ship, Jessy orders Arbok to use a dig, and it does so, heading straight to the side, creating an opening, and water flushing in. James yells at Jessy, telling her, well, that was a smart thing. What do you expect us to do now? Jessy says, it's easy. We need this room to fill up with water faster. That way the pressure will equalize, and we can get out. We're too deep in the ship to make it back to the top now. We just have to wait. So with that, the room fills up rather quick, and the two make their escapes with their Pokemon. Once they hit the surface, they get back on the island and meet with Domino. Domino asks if they were successful in retrieving what they were after. Jessy just puts her head to the ground and says no. James too is upset about this. They got their Pokemon back, but they have no way to really use them in battle or take them with them because they have no Pokeballs to keep them in. They don't know what they will do. Meanwhile, all of the fighting has subsided. Ash and his friends, as well as Lance, the Dragon Master, were able to quell the fighting between Groudon and Kyogre. And now that the two have given up on their quarrel with each other, they return to their respective resting places, away from humanity. The remnants of Team AQUA and Team MAGMA scattered to the 4 winds of HOENN. There is nothing left. Jessy and James were successful in their quest to end Team AQUA and Team MAGMA. Domino is extremely grateful that those two were able to aid her. She was unsure if she was able to do it by herself. But now, they have a more pressing matter. Arbok, Weezing, Breloom, and Numel. What to do with them? After some thinking, Domino makes the suggestion. She's going to head back to the Mount Chimney base where Meowth is, so that way she can debrief Giovanni and come up with a new plan to find Butch, Cassidy, Namba, and the Iron Mask Marauder, as Giovanni still hasn't given up interest in dealing out their punishments. She tells Jessy and James that she will have the 4 Pokemon shipped to the Mount Chimney base, and she will keep them there until they are able to retrieve their Pokeballs. Though Jessy and James don't like this, as they will be unable to use these Pokemon, it is the best course of action. At least the Pokemon themselves will be safe until they are able to get back the balls. With that, Jessy and James now have to decide what they're going to do. After all, they were taking the gym challenge, but their cover for taking the gym challenge was that they were supposed to end Team Aqua and Team Magma. Now that they've ended it, technically, they're supposed to go back with Domino. There's a moment of silence as Jessy and James both realize this. Domino turns to the two, and without them saying a word, she says, listen, technically Butch and Cassidy, the Iron Mask Marauder, and Namba are still out there, so I don't see any harm in you guys going to search for them. And if it just so happens that you have to challenge a couple of gyms along the way and take on the Pokemon League, then that's what it is. Jessy and James look at Domino. Without saying a word, they just give her a smile, and they part ways as Domino makes the call for support from Mount Chimney base to come and pick her and the Pokemon up. Jessy and James have to decide where they're going. James, it's simple. He's got 1 badge left, so he's going to head to Sootopolis City. While Jessy, well, it's pretty simple as well, because she only has 1 badge left. She has to head to Fort Tree City. With that, the two friends say their goodbyes, and they part ways. Jessy catching a boat to Lily Cove, and James catching a boat to Sootopolis City. It takes Jessy a couple of weeks, but she eventually makes it to Fort Tree City. Along the way, she's been putting in a lot of training. She has been desperately trying to earn the trust of Exploud, but it is met with consistent failure, to the point to where she almost wants to give up on it and just release it. She doesn't really know what more she can do. But when she reached the Fort Tree Gym, she's met with Winona, the flying type expert, and she declares that she is here for a battle. Winona is more than happy to meet Jessy with this, as she is obligated to by the Pokemon League rules. The two head into the gym, and Winona informs Jessy that it'll be a 3-on-3 battle, and Jessy can change out as she wishes, but Winona will not be able to, and the battle will be over when either side is all out of Pokemon. Jessy agrees to this, and they take their positions on the battlefield. Winona immediately sends out her Altaria. Jessy pulls out her Pokedex, and once she gets the data on it, she realizes that Altaria is an ice dragon type. She knows just who she has to use against it. Jessy sends in her Spheal. Jessy's hoping that Spheal's ice typing will give her the advantage over the flying dragon, and it does prove to be somewhat successful. Altaria has to get in close because its long range attacks can't really hit Spheal. Spheal's body is a perfect sphere, and it allows it to really bounce and move around the battlefield with little effort. As a result, whenever Altaria comes in for an attack, Spheal is able to get in a nice ice ball, and unfortunately these ice balls get stronger with each successive attack, and it is able to land 3 of them in total, back to back, taking Altaria down. Winona compliments Jessy. She didn't think that this little Spheal and its erratic movements across the battlefield would be able to take out the Altaria, but Winona isn't going to give up yet, and she sends in her second Pokemon, her Skarmory. Unfortunately for Spheal, Skarmory does have the type advantage, and with a Steel Wing and an Aerial Ace, it falls to Skarmory. Jessy isn't really flustered by this though. She knew that Winona would be a hard battle. James told her so and gave her a little bit of insight on the Pokemon that he faced, but she still has to formulate a plan. She doesn't really have anything with a type advantage against Skarmory, but she does kind of have an ace in her sleeve. So this may seem a little crazy, she thinks to herself, but she sends in Seviper. Winona is kind of caught off guard by this. She says, Seviper, why would you send in a poison type to fight a steel type? Poison types have no effect against steel types. Jessy says, listen, let me worry about the details of that. Let's just get this battle started. Winona says, alright, it's your funeral, and the battle gets underway. Winona orders Aerial Ace and Steel Wings to try and attack Seviper, but Jessy is able to successfully dodge them with Dig, causing Winona and Skarmory to get a little bit flustered. And because she's been using Dig, it's creating random holes throughout the battlefield, allowing Seviper places to hide, and this is exactly what Jessy was going for. Each time Skarmory would come down for an Aerial Ace or a Steel Wing, Jessy would order Seviper into one of the holes, and once Skarmory would fly over another one, Seviper would catch it off guard with a new move that Jessy had been working with it, Flamethrower. Even though Seviper is a poison type, Flamethrower is a fire type move, and it's super effective against Skarmory. This game of Pokemon Whack-A-Mole ends up giving Jessy the advantage, and Seviper is able to take down Skarmory in the end after being caught with a Flamethrower. Winona is impressed. she didn't think that a Viper would be able to take out a steel type like Skarmory. She commends Jessy on a job well done, but she still has one more Pokemon to go through, and Winona sends out her Pelipper. This Pelipper is easily able to put down Viper by flooding the holes with water guns when Viper would retreat into them, causing Viper not to be able to dodge the damage and eventually getting taken out. Jessy didn't think that water gun could be used as a counter like that, but it's alright. This is her final gym badge, and she doesn't intend to choke. With that, she pulls out a Pokeball and looks at it. You're the only one of my Pokemon that hasn't been in a gym battle yet, and I'm hoping your speed is good enough to keep up with this bird Pokemon. And with that, Jessy sends in Absol. This battle is one of interesting, because Pelipper has the advantage of being able to take into the sky, but Jessy sees a point of opportunity. The pillars that line the battlefield, Jessy can take advantage of them, and she orders Absol to do so. This allows Absol to get up high to attack Pelipper with its air cutter. This battle does come down to the wire, with Pelipper able to hit Absol with an aerial ace and water gun, causing a lot of damage. But during the battle, Absol does learn a new technique. After watching Pelipper use its aerial ace, it begins to use it on its own without any help from Jessy. And once Jessy realizes what the move is, she's impressed. Absol is a quick study. It wasn't something she was expecting of the Pokemon because she hasn't had a lot of time with it. It learned a new move in the midst of battle that it normally can't learn on its own. This Pokemon is very special, she thinks to herself, but she uses it to her advantage and uses Razor Wind to draw Pelipper in close and then to end it with an aerial ace. The aerial ace connects, putting Pelipper into the ground, earning Jessy her 8th badge of the HOENN region. Jessy is super excited. She has actually earned the right to challenge the Lily of the Valley Conference. Winona, when presenting Jessy with the badge, congratulates her and asks how many more badges she has. Jessy tells her, none. You were in my 8th gym badge, and I'm glad that it was you. Everything that I've been through to this point has shown that I have what it takes to compete in the big leagues. Winona is super pleased that Jessy was able to earn her 8th badge with her. And with that, Jessy then returns to the rocket base on Mount Chimney to see if there's been any progress in tracking Butch, Cassidy, Namba, or the Iron Mask Marauder. Now, we're going to swap over to James and his adventures in Sootopolis City. It didn't take him quite as long to reach Sootopolis as it took Jessy to reach Fort Tree City, because it was fairly close to the island where they were having their battle with Team AQUA and Team MAGMA. So, it only took him a few days. Once he arrives, he immediately heads for the gym. He is anxious to earn his 8th badge. He never thought he would actually be challenging a Pokemon League before. And the fact that he is ready to earn his 8th badge has got him super psyched up. Once he gets inside, he is met with Juan, the gym leader. And Juan is a very, very flamboyant individual. So much so that it catches James's attention. Juan happens to mention that he is a former winner of the HOENN Grand Festival, and he has achieved the title of Master Coordinator. And now he runs the Sootopolis gym. This catches James' attention. He is very interested. Someone who has won the Grand Festival and earned the title of Master Coordinator is now a gym leader. James is intrigued by this. He wants this battle even more now. He wants to know what a Master Coordinator who runs a gym can do. Once they go over the rules, it's the same as when Jessy battled. It's going to be a 2-on-2 tag team, and once James can get through that, then they will move on to the final 3, 5 Pokemon total. James can switch out at any point, but Juan cannot. And with that, the two take their positions on the battlefield. Juan decides to lead with his Wish Cash and his Seeking. Unfortunately, James doesn't have any water types to speak of, so he's going to have to make do with what he's got. But he does have an idea, and he sends in Cacnea and Masquerain. The double battle between the duo gets underway, and it is quite fierce. James is caught up a little bit by the elegance of the moves that Juan does, so much so that it ends up costing his Pokemon some HP and taking the hits just because James is caught off guard and not calling for responses. Juan tells James that if he has interest in being a coordinator, he's going to have to do much better than that. He needs to figure out how he can combo his attacks in his favor. With that ringing in James's ears, he then begins to formulate a plan. You see, Wishcast and Seeking, they're attacking in formation, using Seeking and its horn to draw the attention of their opponents, and then Wishcast following up with a powerful attack. James knows that this is his time to strike. So with that, he orders Cacnea and Masquerain to line up the same as they do when they come in. Juan then orders a Water Pulse from Seeking, which charges through, then followed by a second Water Pulse with Wishcash, the two backing each other up. James orders Cacnea to use Needle Arm to knock both of the attacks away, and then orders it to fire a Pin Missile as the two are still charging in. But he orders Masquerain to power up the Pin Missile with a Gust, and as the gust catches the pin missile in its breeze, it speeds towards the two Pokemon, catching Juan off guard, as they are too fast to dodge. The pin missiles hit with direct damage on the two Pokemon, knocking them both out simultaneously. Juan is impressed. He didn't think that James had it in him to come up with a combination like that. James is astounded as well, because he didn't think it was going to work, but it did work, and it came at a cost. Cacnea and Masquerain are extremely tired. They took a lot of damage, and he doesn't know if they're going to be able to go on. So he recalls both of them right now to try and save them for later. He does have the numbers advantage, but his Pokemon did take a severe beating. Juan then chooses to go with his Love Disc. Love Disc is a super fast Pokemon, and James can see it just by the way it zips around the room. He knows that he's going to need something to match its speed. So he sends in Zangoose. The two Pokemon get underway, and the battle gets intense, with them attacking rapidly, Juan firing a Water Pulse and trying to use the track. Fortunately for James, he knows exactly what's going on, and Zangoose is able to dodge both attacks. Then James orders Zangoose to rebuttal with the Shockwave, which caught Juan off guard, and it does catch Love Disc. It does take a lot of damage, but it's not enough to put Love Disc down. James then orders Zangoose to rush in with a quick attack, and to try and finish it off with a Crush Claw. As Zangoose gets in close, Love Disc fires off a Water Pulse at point blank range, catching both the Pokemon. When the water and the steam settle, both Pokemon lay unconscious. Not exactly what James wanted, but it gets him one step closer to being able to earn his 8th badge. With that, they both recall their Pokemon. Juan is impressed. His Zangoose was tougher than he thought it would be, but that does not matter. Juan is still a formidable trainer. James does have the number advantage, but that isn't always the good thing. With that, Juan sends in his next Pokemon, his Kingdra. James looks at the Pokemon. He knows this Pokemon, a water dragon type. This is not going to be easy. James takes a minute to think to himself, what do I have that I can use against this? This is not going to be good. Cacnea and Masquerain are both tired, and Zangoose has been taken out. All I have left is just Dusclops, Medicham, and Aggron. Aggron has a type disadvantage. Medicham and Dusclops both may be strong enough to take it out, but it would be close. With that, James makes his decision after a little bit of pressure from Juan, telling him that if he doesn't make one soon, then he would be disqualified. James grabs a ball, and he throws in his next Pokemon, Medicham. Medicham is James's best bet at this point, and it does prove so, because Kingdra is very aggressive, firing Twisters, Dragon Rages, and Hydro Pumps, trying to engulf Medicham, but James is prepared for this, and Medicham is as well, as it uses its psychic powers to deflect each one and push it back. Although, as it uses its psychic powers and pushing it back, catching Kingdra in some of them, but it is unable to deflect all of them, and it does get caught in some of them itself. The two Pokemon push hard, but unfortunately, in the end, Medicham eventually falls. James is now down to 3 Pokemon, and he thinks, I don't really have a choice here. I have to go with someone, but I need to save my fresh one for last. So, he sends back in Cacnea. The battle between Cacnea and Kingdra gets underway, and Juan's strategy is still the same with Kingdra, trying to engulf the field with Dragon Rage and Twister. But luckily for James, Cacnea is able to mostly dodge these, and it's able to get in with a couple of pin missiles and a needle arm, causing severe damage to Kingdra. Then comes the point to where James orders Cacnea to jump up in the air and try to fire a pin missile. Juan sees this as a chance, and he orders a Hydro Pump. As Kingdra fires it towards Cacnea, James orders Cacnea to use its momentum and to lean back. This causes Cacnea to roll, and with the rolling, James uses the momentum to fire a pin missile from a distance, hitting Kingdra, knocking it out. Cacnea then lands and is extremely out of breath. This battle was intense, and it pushed the little cactus Pokemon to the limit. Juan commemorates James and Cacnea on a battle well fought. He didn't think that this little cactus was going to be able to go the distance, but it did. And as Juan is giving Cacnea its praise, Cacnea starts to glow. James looks at Cacnea. He can't believe it. Is this really happening? And with that, James now has a new Cacturn. Cacturn looks back at James. It's ready to continue to battle. James asks it if it wants to stay in, and Cacturn nods, and he is in full agreement with this. But this doesn't come up without a cost. Even though it's evolved, Cacturn still has taken a lot of damage and it is exhausted. James knows that it's exhausted, and unfortunately it may not make it through the next battle, but James is going to do his best to push through. With that, Juan sends in his final Pokemon, Milotic. James has never faced a Pokemon like this before, and the way it moves in the water and the way it fires attacks catches James off guard. Though Cacturn has grown in power, it's only able to deflect a couple attacks. It does get a pin missile in that does hit Milotic, but unfortunately, it's not enough to put the Pokemon down, and Cacturn eventually falls to a Twister. James recalls He thanks it for all of its hard work. He can't believe that it evolved just so he could help James get through this gym badge, but he has no time to reminisce on this. He has to send in his next Pokemon. So with that, he clutches the ball in his hand, and he sends back in Masquerain. Masquerain is ready to battle. This this Pokemon, even though it did take a lot of damage in its first double battle, it's still moving around like it hasn't taken any damage at all. But James doesn't know how long it can keep this up. The battle between Masquerain and Milotic get underway, and because Masquerain stays at a distance, Milotic really can't reach it with its twisters and its Hydro Pumps. But it does get caught in a Silver Wind, and this Silver Wind seems to be having effects on Masquerain, because Masquerain seems to be getting faster, and every attack it launches seems to be getting stronger. So James decides to go with this strategy and just keeps ordering Masquerain to fire Silver Wind after Silver Wind, and it works. Eventually, over time, the little bug Pokemon is able to push back one of the twisters, catching Milotic in it, causing it some damage. This is when Juan reveals its trump card. He calls for a recovering some of the damage that Milotic had taken. James thinks, this is bad. How am I going to get out of this? Masquerain is beginning to show signs of fatigue. Its stats are up, but he doesn't know how much longer it can take. With that, James orders one desperate attempt and orders Masquerain to fire another gust. The gust speeds towards Milotic, but Milotic pushes through with the Hydro Pump, catching Masquerain as it was unable to dodge due to its fatigue, knocking it out. James is down to his last Pokemon, but Milotic is starting to show signs of fatigue, even though it does have recover. James needs something powerful. He needs something that can put a lot of damage on the field, and he only has one Pokemon that can do that. With no other options, James makes a choice that he hopes that he doesn't regret, and he sends in Aggron. As Aggron emerges from the ball, it roars, trying to intimidate its opponent. Juan at this moment thinks James has begun to crack under the pressure. Why would you send out a rock type to face a water type? Are you out of your mind? He thinks to himself, but he has no time for that. He aims to end this battle now, as James is down to his final Pokemon. So the battle gets underway, but unfortunately for Juan, James's Aggron is proven to be way more formidable. At a point when Aggron catches Milotic's tail when it tries to fire a twister towards it, Juan orders Milotic to pull it underwater, thinking that that would be enough to put Aggron down. But unfortunately, when Aggron gets underwater, it uses the force of Milotic pulling it in to hit it with a double edge at James's order, and this causes a lot of damage. Juan is caught off guard. He's thinking to himself, what is going on here? Why is this Aggron in the water? And not only that, but Aggron seems to be swimming as well. James tells Juan this was his plan. Even though Aggron is weak against water, his Aggron, for some reason, has the ability to swim. I guess it comes from the fact that I had caught it on Dewford Island, a place surrounded by water. Juan thinks to himself, maybe this kid isn't so crazy at all. So he has to step up his game. Once Aggron gets it back on land, Juan orders Milotic to fire a Hydro Pump at Aggron, hoping to push it back and end this. James wants to end this as well, and he orders Aggron to take the Hydro Pump straight to its head, rushing in with double edge. Aggron does so, and it rushes towards Milotic as fast as it can, and with all of its might, it pushes off the land part of the battlefield, heading straight for Milotic. And as it comes clashing down, James wants to use the weight of Aggron to increase one of its best attacks, Iron Tail. And as James calls for Iron Tail, Aggron's tail connects with Milotic's head, slamming into it with full force and the full weight of Aggron behind it, knocking out Milotic and earning James his 8th and final badge for the HOENN region. James is super ecstatic. He can't believe that he was able to do it. Even though he kind of doubted the strategy with going with Aggron, proved to be successful. James can't wait for his chance to challenge the Lily of the Valley Conference. And as Juan gives him the rain badge, Juan tells James that he hasn't been that impressed since he battled a young trainer by the name of Ash. And with that, he also tells James that he might want to consider his future as a coordinator, as his ability to use techniques in combination could bring him great success in the Grand Festival. And with that, James parts ways with the Sootopolis Gym, and he heads back to the Mount Chimney base for Team Rocket. Once Jessy gets back to the Mount Chimney base, James is there waiting for her. The two gleefully greet each other and start to show off their badges, both signifying that they have earned 8 badges each and can enter the Lily of the Valley Conference. But their celebration is short-lived as they're met by Meowth. Meowth has been very busy building up the base and trying to track down Butch and Cassidy, but he has bad news. He's been unable to gather the whereabouts of Butch and Cassidy. Now that they're fugitives of Team Rocket, they're doing their best to lay low as not to grab attention from anybody, but he's still going to continue to work diligently. Domino, on the other hand, does have some information for them. She tells them that after talking with Giovanni wants them to return to Kanto as soon as possible, as he has another mission for them. Jessy and James look at each other. Then they look at Domino with a look of fear on their faces. Domino says, "Don't worry." He said, "As soon as you're done with your mission out here." Jessy and James says, "What do you mean?" Domino says, "Well, I kind of told him that you guys were rounding up the last of the admins of Team AQUA in Team Magma, so I've bought you a little bit of time. Jessy and James's face immediately turned from fear to relief. They're going to get the opportunity to challenge the Lily of the Valley Conference. After spending a few days at the Mount Chimney base getting ready for the conference, Jessy and James also wanted to spend some time with their Pokemon that they're not going to be able to use. But they eventually have to part ways, and they head off to Evergrande City. Once they arrive at Evergrande City, they register for the championships. Now, this is where things get a little interesting. In the original canon, Jessy and James weren't there to battle. They were there serving concessions in the stands. Now, I'm not going to draw this out into a super long, super detailed event, as this video has become long enough as it is. But I will tell you here that James has had more training than Jessy. So I feel like Jessy would make it to the top 32 and lose in round 3. And the reason that she would lose is because of X-Cloud. Unfortunately, because she still hasn't tamed it, in a moment of desperation, trying to use it in a 3 out of 3, it wouldn't listen to her. And unfortunately, she would end up having to recall it, forfeiting the match. James, on the other hand, I think he would make it to the first 6-on-6 battle. And there, unfortunately, I think he would lose due to his opponent being more experienced than him, and his opponent being the one who would eventually go on to win the league, Tyson. Now, there are a couple of things that would change here, and that I would want to specify. And that's predominantly with Ash's team. So Ash still would catch all the same Pokemon that he normally does, with a couple of differences. First things first. I do think that Pikachu and Swellow's development would still be the same, but Grovyle would be a little bit weaker here, as well as Corphish and Torkoal. And then there's one major change. Because Team Rocket wasn't there to try and attack Snorunt at the Grand Festival, I don't think it would be evolved. So Ash's core team would be a lot weaker here, and as a result, I don't think Ash would make it past the top 16, and he would actually end up losing to Morrison, because in the original, his Glalie was strong enough to take out the Metang. But in this version, because Snorunt never evolved, Glalie ends up losing to Metang. And then at that point, Morrison would go on to the top 8 and end up losing to Tyson, and Tyson would go on to win the whole league. With that being said, Jessy and James, after their adventures in the Lily of the Valley Conference come to an end, would get intel from Meowth, saying that Butch and Cassidy were spotted back in the Kanto region, and they, too, have decided to head back because they have some unfinished business with the duo. And I believe that during Ash's trek through the Battle Frontier, their time would be spent tracking down Butch and Cassidy to retrieve their lost Pokeballs, with minimum success. They would eventually get one ball each. Jessy would get Nummels, and James would get Breloom's, but that would still leave Arbok and Weezing's balls to get. And with Ash concluding the Battle Frontier, and Jessy and James now back at the Team Rocket base, Giovanni has ordered them to pay their price. So unfortunately, they're going to have to forfeit some of their Pokemon that they captured in Hoenn here. Giovanni, of course, would want to take the strongest. So I feel like James, unfortunately, would end up losing his Aggron, his Zangoose, and his Medicham to Giovanni, while Jessy would end up losing her Absol, her Claydol, and Seviper to Giovanni, just because they are the strongest members of their team. He still allows them to keep 3 core members, as they're going to need them, because rumor has it that another team has popped up in a region up north, and Jessy and James were given orders to head north to infiltrate and take down this new team. So with that and the unfortunate events of having to give up some of their prized Pokemon, Jessy and James make the choice to head to the Sinnoh region. And that's all we have for the finale of What If Jessy and James Took the Gym Challenge. I know that the ending kind of seems rushed, but to be honest with you guys, I just really wanted to wrap this one up. I feel like I've been dragging it out for far too long, and I should have been done and over with it by now. But I do feel that there's an opportunity for a second part to this one in the future. I feel a little bit burnt out on telling the story of Jessy and James right now, but I can definitely tell you that I will consider the option of doing their Sinnoh Gym Challenge in the future. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about how everything turned out in this one. With the gym battles, with the conclusion of the Team AQUA and the Team MAGMA arc, with Jessy and James challenging the Lily of the Valley Conference, and of course, their orders to go to Sinnoh. And not to mention the fact that they still don't have access to all of their Pokemon. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to drop a like, as it'll really help us get to a bigger audience. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, as it'll really help with the YouTube algorithm. And of course, if you guys enjoyed the What If content and you may want to create some of your own, or you want to talk with other people that like What If content, join the Discord in the link below, as there's a lot of people in there that enjoy talking about that stuff. And then don't forget to follow me on Twitter, as I usually post things there that I'm doing behind the scenes, so it'll give you a real look in real time of what I'm actually working on. And that is all I have for you guys. This is Ronan Charizard, and I'll see you in the next video.